Good evening, everyone. Actually, I'm supposed to come and take you the tutorial normally, but something came up and I got busy, so that's why I couldn't take the tutorial. And actually, I planned the tutorial with your class rep, but I think he got busy too, so he wasn't able to schedule the tutorial for this morning. So that's why I said, oh, this thing I still need to take you and contribute my own quota to your own development and to your own success, because one thing I've taken upon my shoulder is to always help the juniors. I've been doing this for more than 3 years and I will continue to be doing it by God's grace. So help me God. So now I had your biochemistry result was not giving, it was somehow poor. Don't give up, just continue pushing, continue pushing. If you are the part, if you are part of the people that the result is not smiling at, the scoreboard is not smiling at you, don't give up yet. Just continue putting in your effort and always believe that you can make it and it will surely happen. So I want to take you on a topic called control of respiration. This topic is actually somehow tricky, but if you get it once and for all, you don't need to worry. You just need to understand it. Once you understand the concept, then you don't need to cram anything. It's going to come naturally. And this topic usually they you see a lot of it in MCQs. You see a lot of it in MCQ. So that's why I did the way I structured the class is to make sure that okay, it can cover both MCQ aspects and cover the theory aspect too. Once you understand the whole concept and how everything works, then you will not have a problem. So the topic I want to take you is actually physiology, and it's the topic is control of respiration. So I'm taking you on control of respiration. So when we say control of respiration, I think this one is an RS topic. And respiration, breathing in, breathing out, respiration, glucose broken down to give us carbon dioxide and oxygen that is needed, everything like, and energy. Do you understand? But now when we are saying control of respiration, there are two types of control of respiration. We have the neurogenic control and chemical control. There are two types of control of respiration: neurogenic control and what? And chemical control. Now there is an MCQ that they used to ask. That one is very, very common. Is that they will say Henry-Burer's reflex or other type of control of respiration has is how many times the tidal volume. So the answer is it is 3 times the tidal volume. It is 3 times the tidal volume. So that's what that one, by the way. So you see it, you are going to see it. So if there is a question, MCQ question on control of respiration, they say you see this one. Henry-Burer's reflex is 3 times the tidal volume. So let's go back to control of respiration. There are two types of control of respiration: neurogenic control and what? Chemical control. Neurogenic control and chemical control. If you are going to be writing it in theory, it's either they say you should write on neural control of respiration or neurogenic control of respiration, or they say you should write on chemical control of respiration. They can't give you to write the two control of respiration because it's actually much. But if they ask you to write it, then it will likely be an LAQ question because it's very much. So if they ask you to write on neurogenic control of respiration or chemical control of respiration, please give them the diagram. There's a diagram that I don't want the lecture to be a lengthy one. That's why I just didn't put the diagram. But the diagram is definitely inside your textbook, or the lecturer might actually give you the diagram. So please put the diagram. Now, when we say the neural control of respiration, let us consider that one first before we move towards chemical control of respiration. So for the neural control of respiration or the neurogenic control of respiration, we have two types: voluntary and what? Involuntary. Voluntary and involuntary. When we say voluntary, that is what you can control, what you can actually control. So it can be controlled by you. But when we say involuntary actions, it means you can't control it. You don't have control over it, right? So when we say control of respiration, voluntary control of respiration, it means what? By the higher centers. What are the higher centers? Cerebrum. You know cerebrum, you will think before you do it. So that's why you can actually decide that you want to hold your breath. Maybe something is smelling, you don't want to smell that particular thing, so you might actually hold your breath Do you understand? Or maybe you are swimming. So that's an example of what control of respiration is by the higher centers. Hypothalamus, maybe when you are sick, so that feeling feverish because what you are trying to what to catch your breath. So that's control of higher centers by the voluntary control of respiration. Then limbic system, pains, your emotions might actually make you, maybe you want to breathe or not. So that's that about that. Then the involuntary aspect of the neurogenic control of respiration, we have two types. We have the one by the pons, also called the pontine, and what the medulla or the medullary. Do you understand? So for the pons, is actually divided into two. We have the apneustic centers and what pneumothoracic centers. But for the medullary, we have the ventral and what and the dorsal. So there is a nicked a mnemonic I use. That's what Pap and Mavin dynasty. So when we say Pap, I say yeah, it means what Pons, P-A-P. Do you understand? So Pons is for apneustic center and pneumothoracic center. You see Pap. Then Mavin dynasty, Supreme Marvin dynasty that we all know, Don Jazzy and the likes, Rema. So Marvin dynasty. So medulla, ventral and what and dorsal. Do you understand? So when we say control of respiration, neurogenic aspect, voluntary, involuntary, the involuntary, pons and what medullary. Pons is PAP, PAP. Pons, apneustic center, pneumothoracic center, medullary, Marvin dynasty, MVD. So Marvin dynasty. Do you understand? Ventral dorsal. So now let's go to the apneustic center now. What the apneustic center are the lower pons, the lower part of the pons. That's where the apneustic centers are located. What's the function of the apneustic center? They promote continuous inspiration. They promote continuous inspiration. So the apneustic center found in the lower pons is for what? Inspiration. Now, this is the tips for you to quickly remember. If you want to inspire, now catch in breath now. Try to breathe in. What happens? You see that you notice that you are taking the action from down, then it will now move up. You see that your chest will move up. You are starting the activity from what? From the top, from the down. Do you understand? So that's why we apneustic center for inspiration. What happens from down? So is the lower pons. Do you understand? Then the pneumothoracic center, that's the upper pons. When you are moving from up down, it will get to a point that if you breathe in, you get to a point that you will be at peak. Do you understand? Is the pneumothoracic center that is at the top, at the lower pons, at the upper pons that will say, oh, it's all right, it's all right. That breath, that volume of breath you've catch is enough. Do you understand? So it's the pneumothoracic center, which is at the upper pons, that will help us to limit or that will help us to inhibit inspiration. It's not as if it's stopping inspiration or for expiration. No, it will just say, let's say you breathe in, to get to a point that you reach your peak. Do you understand? So at the upper pons, when we say peak, it means what? Up. So it's the pneumothoracic center that is at the upper pons that help us to what? Inhibit inspiration. If you can picture it like that, you'll be able to get it. So you don't need to cram anything. Do you understand? So it's the pneumothoracic center that makes sure that our inspiration is not for too long. Do you understand? Because if you are breathing for too long, you get to a point you'll be tired. That place, that peak is what? Pneumothoracic center. Peak. P. Pneumothoracic P. Do you understand? Peak starts with what? P. Pneumothoracic starts with P. So peak. Pneumothoracic, when you inspirate for too long, that peak that you reach is the limit, that peak will limit your what? Your inspiration, will help us to inhibit in inspiration is at what? Upper pons pneumothoracic center. So it's very simple. You don't need to cram anything. Do you understand? So that's that by the way. Then when we now move towards medullary, the medullary we have dive. You know, I say medullary now. We use Mavin dynasty, right? Mavin dynasty. Medullary. V that is in the Mavin. That's what ventral aspect and what D dynasty. Then dorsal group of what? Of the medulla. Do you understand? So the to know which one is for inspiration and which one is for expiration, we use what? Dive. Dive. Can you see it? We use dive. So it means D, which is what? The dorsal group is for inspiration, while the ventral group is for what? Expiration. But note one thing here, MCQ, is not for expiration per se. is just for what? For forced expiration, because the dorsal group contains inspiratory neurons. Therefore, what does inspiratory neurons does? For inspiration. Do you understand? But the ventral group contains what? Both inspiratory and what? Expiratory neurons. But most especially and majorly, it contains the what? The expiratory neurons. Therefore, they are used for what? Forced expiration. Therefore, if they ask you that forced expiration, what do they use forced expiration for? Is for what? The first expiration is for which group of the medulla is responsible for first expiration? The what? The ventral group. Do you understand? So dive D, which is what? Dorsal group for inspiration, ventral group for what? First expiration. Do you understand? So that's that about um the neurogenic control of respiration. Can you see that it is just that simple? Now let's move to chemical control of respiration. When we are talking about the chemical control of respiration, it's also divided into two too. It's also divided into two as well. We have the peripheral and what? The central. We have the peripheral and the central. When we say peripheral, that one is sensitive to what? Arterial blood gases. And what are the arterial blood gases? Oxygen and CO2, right? But most importantly and most especially due to the peripheral is sensitive to what? Low partial pressure of oxygen. So when we have low partial pressure of oxygen, what will happen? Is the peripheral aspect of the chemoreceptors will be what? Will be activated. Do you understand? So what of the central? The central chemoreceptors are what? Sensitive to increase in hydrogen ion concentration in the CSF. So now this thing is actually very simple and I want you to take it like this. Look at it. PP. So peripheral is for what? Decreased partial pressure of oxygen. CC. Central chemoreceptor is responsible for what? They are sensitive for what? Increase in H plus in what? CSF. That they are just that simple. Do you understand? Now let's still continue. Now look at it. The peripheral is divided into two. We have the carotid body and what? The aortic body. Carotid body and what? Aortic body. Now imagine another thing that I said. I said what? They are sensitive to what? Arterial blood gases. They are sensitive to arterial blood gases. Blood gases. Blood. So it means carotid and aortic. You know now, when you do CVS, carotid and aortic is also pertaining towards CVS to blood. Do you understand? So you can still use what? The mnemonics CAP. When you say CAP, it means carotid aortic is pertaining to what? Peripheral. Do you understand? Then let's come to this place. The central, the part that control the central most importantly is the medulla. But what part of the medulla? The what? The ventrolateral side of the medulla. That still brought us to what? To the Mervin dynasty that we are talking about before, right? The Mervin dynasty. So Mervin, medulla, right? We know that one. But which part of the medulla? The ventrolateral part of the medulla. So supreme. You know, if you want to pronounce supreme, central. Do you understand? So central. That's how I come about all these ones. So it's very simple. You don't need to cram anything. It's that simple. Now, how does the peripheral chemoreceptors, how do they control inspiration? How do they control respiration? They control respiration by increasing inspiration. When they increase inspiration, there will be more oxygen intake. Why are they increasing inspiration? Because you know we said that what is the stimulus? What is making what is the stimulus? What is it sensitive to? It's sensitive to what? Low partial pressure of oxygen. How can we eradicate this? How can we bring the body back to homeostasis? By simply what? Increasing the what? The oxygen. And how can we increase oxygen? By what? By having more intake of uptake of oxygen, and that's by what? By increasing our inspiration. You see, that's how it's being controlled. Do you understand? Now, how is the central chemoreceptor? Does it perform its own work? So how does it control respiration? Is by hyperventilation to exhale excess what? Carbon dioxide. When the carbon dioxide is exhaled, what will happen? There will be decrease in what? In H plus. What is causing the problem before that we now need to increase to bring the body back to homeostasis is because of what? Increase in what? H plus. There is increase in H plus. What can we do to reduce this? H plus and CO2 they go hand in hand, and CO2 is what? Excess CO2. The way we can reduce CO2 is by what? Hyperventilation. When I'm saying hyperventilation, you are doing do you understand? Inspiration is that you are doing you get breathing in and breathing out. That's what inspiration. But hyperventilation, you are trying to catch more air, catch more breath. You can be doing it with your mouth, with your everything. Do you understand? So you are trying to exhale what? CO2 by hyperventilation. So that's that about that. So peripheral, increase inspiration, central, hyperventilation. Do you understand? So that's that about that. Now let me now explain it a little bit. If they ask you maybe in your in your theory, so how do you control does the central chemoreceptor, how does it work? How does the peripheral chemoreceptor too works? Now, these central chemoreceptors, the way it works is actually very simple. This ventrolateral part of the medulla is sensitive to H plus, as I've told you here. But the H plus cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, which leads to corresponding increase in CO2. Because this H plus cannot cross blood-brain barrier, and I told you that H plus and CO2 they move hand in hand, right? So the CO2 will so this H plus that is in the body will what? Will leads to corresponding increase in CO2 which can pass the blood-brain barrier. So when it crosses the blood-brain barrier, it mixes with what? CXF fluid, cerebrospinal fluid. And you know the cerebrospinal fluid by its definition is a what? We say is a colorless fluid. Is a colorless, so like is in what form of water, right? CH2, H2O. So therefore they does when they mix it, they will give to write to an equation. What is the equation that we all know? The CO2 plus H2O under the influence of what? Carbonic anhydride will give us what? HCO3 plus H plus. If you do profile now about chemistry, you know this one is actually very common, and we've encountered this particular equation a lot and a lot over and over again. Do you understand? So now when H plus and HCO3 minus and H plus is formed, right? So this H plus is now liberated and its corresponding increase in the dorsal group of the medulla. You know, it's in the medulla now, like everything is happening in the medulla. So because of its liberation in the medulla, it will send a signal to the dorsal group of the medulla. When it send a signal to the dorsal group of the medulla, what will happen? There will be increase in what? In inspiration. You know, I told you, dive. D is for what? Inspiration. So when it sends it to the dorsal group of the medulla, there will be what? Increase in inspiration. And when there is increase in inspiration, it will bring the concentration of H2O back to what? Back to normal. Because, do you understand? Because when there is increase in inspiration, there will be increase in O2 and decrease in CO2. And when there is decrease in CO2, it will automatically lead to what? Decrease in what? H plus. Do you understand? It's actually that simple. It's actually that simple. Now, what of the last part, which is the peripheral chemoreceptors? Now, how does the peripheral chemoreceptor works? I said that what they depends on what? The carotid body and the what? Aortic body. But how does it? I said they are sensitive to what? Arterial blood gases. Most importantly, what? PCO2, partial pressure of what? Of oxygen. And that is what? Decrease in partial pressure of oxygen is referred to as what? Hypoxia. So when we say that, what is the stimulus for peripheral chemoreceptors? Is what? Hypoxia. Do you understand? But uh, how does it works? How does it work? Is that okay? You know our normal nervous system and qualities of homeostasis. You move from the stimulus to the receptor, from stimulus to receptor, from receptor to afferent neuron, from afferent neuron to what? To integrating center, to efferent neuron to what? To the effector. From the effector, it will now produce its effect, right? Now, what is the stimulus? In this case, hypoxia. So it will send, the hypoxia will send what? We send the stimulus to the receptor. What are the receptor in this case? Carotid sinus, the carotid body and what? And the aortic body. What are the afferent neuron? The carotid body, the afferent neuron is cranial nerve 9, C9. So the cranial nerve 9, while the aortic body, the afferent neuron is what? Cranial nerve 10. The two of them send to the same integrating center. What is the integrating center? Nucleus of tractus solitarius. Nucleus of tractus solitarius. So The nucleus of tractus solitarius, which is the integrating center, will now send to the what? To the effector through the what? Afferent neuron. What are the afferent neuron in this case? Intercostal nerves and what? And the phrenic nerves. Intercostal nerve and the phrenic nerves. So what are the effector? Effector are the muscles that will help us to do the effects that we want to happen. And what are the effector? The intercostal nerve will act on which effector muscles? On the intercostal muscles, right? While the phrenic nerve that is having cranial nerve 3, 4, and 5 will act on what? On the what? On the diaphragm. What happen? In your introductory class to respiratory system, we say what? Intercostal muscles and the diaphragm, they play important role in what? In inspiration. So that's that about that. So when the impulse that is received by the receptor will determine the action that will be taken, that will take place. So if it is hypoxia, you know that okay, they will control the respiration to increase what? Inspiration. If it is hypercapnia, that is increase in CO2, what will happen? They will control the muscles to do what? To increase ventilation, to cause what? Hyperventilation. So that's that about that. So I think by now you all understand what control of respiration is. Quick recap: control of respiration is divided into neurogenic and chemical control. Neurogenic, it can be voluntary or involuntary. Chemical control, it can be what? Peripheral or central. And I've explained everything. So I'm going to send uh the picture, this picture, to you so that you can all get it. So thank you very much. I still remain OG Snap. Thank you. Bye.